It is 12:08 in the West on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
John, we are following the breaking news that conservative media personality and activist Charlie Kirk has been shot while at a Q&A event at Utah Valley University. When we know more, we'll let you know more.
Here is what the Deseret News is reporting right now. The Deseret News, which is based out of the state of Utah, which is where he was, says that Charlie Kirk was shot at an event at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah on Wednesday. That's today. Bystanders report seeing Kirk shot near his neck during a Q&A with students. A suspect is in custody, according to a UVA alert sent to students. The campus is on lockdown right now as we speak. There is video on social media of a man who looks like an older bald man being detained by the cops, where the people around him appear to be saying something to the effect of, "That's the man that shot Charlie Kirk." So all of this is breaking. And just to turn the clock back, or turn the clock on the backside so you know how we do the show here, what we're dealing with before the show starts. Right before the show begins, Randy and I meet and we're going over the sound. We're going over what clips we're going to play during the show. So we stop paying attention to what's going on in the world for a moment to just go over what's coming on the show. That's when all of this happened. So right before showtime, when our phone started blowing up, that's when we became aware of the shooting in Utah. Beyond what we just reported to you, we really don't know much else. But as soon as new information comes in, we'll bring that to you. Obviously, our thoughts and our prayers go out to Charlie Kirk and to his family who are dealing with this. We do not know what condition he's in right now. Obviously, anytime you get shot, it's a serious thing. You get shot in the neck, that's a very serious thing. The video of the shooting is all over social media. I made the mistake of watching it. It is very, very, very difficult to watch. If you're squeamish, I recommend staying away from it because it's going to be an image that you just can't take out of your mind.
Yeah, I'm going to pass on watching that video.
But just a horrible, tragic event in the state of Utah. And we'll bring you information as it comes in. As I mentioned before, we have tragic news today in the state of Utah where Charlie Kirk was speaking to a group of college students and he was shot in the neck. We know that an arrest was made, or at least someone was detained. Charlie was immediately taken to the hospital. His condition at this point is unknown. We know that he lost a lot of blood after he was shot in the neck. But, Randy, you have an update for us.
I got two updates, actually. One, the university is now saying that Charlie Kirk was shot from a campus building 200 yards away from where the event was. And according to a source from the AP, Charlie Kirk is in critical condition at a hospital right now.
Okay. Now, as we digest this information, and again, when a story like this happens, a lot of bad information comes out over social media where people report things that did not happen. People jump the gun and say that a situation is true when it may not necessarily be, whether it be reporting on the medical condition of the person who was shot, in this case, Charlie Kirk. Sometimes people say arrests were made, they weren't made. So we're trying to figure out just exactly what we can verify before we bring it to you because we don't want to give you bad information. But all of that being said, as I'm sitting here sick to my stomach, looking at these images and reading what people are saying and reading what people are talking about related to this horrific incident, one of the things that people reference is the discourse, the political discourse in this country. That is something that's just gone sour, and because it's gone sour, we're going to very dark places. Well, let's look at what happened here, specifically involving Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk is a guy who is willing to reach out and have a dialogue with people who disagree with him. That's kind of the whole point of what he does. He's not a guy that just speaks to people who think like him. He goes to different college campuses and he has a dialogue with the students and he allows them to ask questions, and it's a conversation. There's a back and forth. He puts his position out, they put their position out, they talk it through. That's what's supposed to happen. Gavin Newsom, who we talk about on this program all of the time, had a podcast showing that he could reach out to conservative America. Who did he have on the podcast? Charlie Kirk. I think he was the first guest, wasn't he?
That's the one that made headlines. It went everywhere. And then after that, it's been people still checking to see if that podcast is relevant for about 15 weeks.
So Charlie Kirk was willing to go in the lion's den and have a conversation with Gavin Newsom. And it was a polite conversation. They weren't screaming at each other. They weren't storming out of the room. They weren't yelling at one another. They have two very different worldviews. And they had a conversation where they put those worldviews on display. And in that particular conversation, what made the most news out of anything was where Gavin Newsom claimed they actually had agreement, which in that particular case involved transgendered athletes in women's sports, where they both agreed that it was unfair. And that was the headline that went all over the place. And that was what caused Gavin Newsom to do a 180. Gavin Newsom, instead of being the guy that was talking to people who disagreed with him, got so much negative blowback from his own team that he decided to rebrand himself as the guy who hates Donald Trump more than anyone else. But in that brief period of time where he was showing the world that he could talk to the other side, it was Charlie Kirk that first came to mind as a guy who that would be possible with. And that's an important part of the story here. Before the storyline is bastardized into something that it's not. If you're going to be lectured about how we need to have more civilized dialogue in this country, and we need to hear each other out, and we need to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to have their say, he's your guy. He was probably the most famous person in the country who's known for that. So you can't say that that's what you want and then brand him the villain. If you're on the left side of the aisle, you're never going to see the world the same way as him. That's just not possible. Maybe there will be areas of agreement, but in terms of an overall worldview, that's just not something you're going to get. But he's someone that you can have the conversation with. He's someone that you can have the debate with. He's someone that you can have a good time with. Now, we played you the audio of the Gavin Newsom interview with Charlie Kirk. Randy, you saw the visuals of what was going on during that sit down, but it looked like Gavin was having a good time, didn't it?
Gavin was kissing his ass. Tell me about all your success.
That was how Gavin Newsom was trying to brand himself for a moment in time.
He's kind of an interview chameleon. He kind of changes his personality based on whoever he's talking to.
He does. But for a moment in time, I believe he was going to try to make himself the Democrat Charlie Kirk, where he would go into conservative environments. And he did go on Hannity a couple of times. He debated Ron DeSantis. But I think until he got the negative blowback, that was his plan. That's what Gavin Newsom was going to do. And then he decided to go in a different direction. And what's crazy to me is that there are people out there right now who are already referring to him as divisive, or we need to tone down the rhetoric. If you're going to try to do that, you need more Charlie Kirks. That's how that works. He's the prototype of what you should want, at least. Maybe you don't want it, but That's the kind of guy that you should want. And let me tell you, that's not an easy thing to do, to go into the lion's den like he does, day in and day out, and have the conversation. He's looking to win the argument. He's looking to expose people who disagree with him to an argument that maybe they had never thought of before. Because let's face it, college campuses, in many ways, can be the most closed-minded places on planet Earth, where you have bubbles of professors in particular who all think the same thing about every subject. There's not a lot of political disagreement that goes on in those places. So that's where he went. That's where he decided to go. And because of that, I would imagine for many of these students, for the arguments that he was making, maybe it was the first time they've heard that on that campus. I wouldn't be surprised. If they come from a conservative family, maybe they heard variations of that argument at home. But while they're on a college campus, even in a place like Utah, they're dominated by people who are on the opposite side. So by going in to the lion's den, he was exposing these kids to something that they will almost certainly be exposed to when they leave college, but they might not hear for 4 consecutive years, or if you get a master's degree, 6 years, or a PhD, even longer than that. And he was so confident in his ability to craft the argument that he thinks, or he thought, at a minimum, if he presents this persuasive argument in front of them, it'll get them thinking. What's wrong with that? That's the way it's supposed to work in the world. You come up with your argument, I come up with mine, and sure, in the battle you want to win, but over time, you cannot deny the holes in your own argument if you see them repeatedly, if there's a pattern. And that was his whole philosophy. Just go out, make the argument, be jovial about it, have a good time, be kind to people you disagree with, and maybe some of them will come to your side over time, and maybe some of them won't. But that was what he did. So for all these people who are already saying, well, this is just a sign of the divisive times, not him. That's not what he did. All right. Randy, yesterday we spent some time on this program talking about the county government, talking about Los Angeles County, and in particular, how we're not very well run.
And in fact, things have gotten so bad that over the last few months, the Attorney General for California, Rob Bonta, has sued to put the juvenile justice system in receivership because of the conditions and lack of staffing at Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall. And now he is suing the county because of the conditions of LA County jails. Well, there's a whole lot of problems going on at LA County, but if you ask the Board of Supervisors, you ask the mayor of Los Angeles how things are going, they'll tell you everything's going great. Crime is down at historic lows. Well, one of the most obvious, blatant, brazen crimes that we see rampantly throughout Southern California and Northern California, mostly Oakland, is street takeovers. And what do you know? The street takeovers have not gone down. They have only gone up. And the Board of Supervisors, and this was actually a task force convened by Holly Mitchell, has a bi-monthly meeting with the task force on dealing with street takeovers. And that task force is made up of law enforcement from the Sheriff's Department and CHP, different community-based organizations that put on seminars for high school students, and Barbara Ferrer.
Next slide.
What could go wrong with Babs involved?
Well, at yesterday's meeting, Holly Mitchell asked why there was such an uptick. She was told that the numbers for these things were going down. Why are there so many more street takeovers happening, according to the Sheriff's Department? And what she heard might not surprise you, but it did surprise them.
Unfortunately, this report shows a 25% increase in takeovers in the 2nd District between January and March and April and June of this year compared to the 50% decrease we saw in the previous report.
By the way, it shows that almost none of these things happen in Catherine Barger's district in Palmdale and Pasadena. I wonder why.
Well, this is the discussion that we had yesterday, where these crimes take place, and if you don't make an arrest, if there's no prosecution, if there's no conviction, how do they show up in the statistics? And the answer is they don't. That was our working theory yesterday, and now we have the proof.
Well, especially when anytime these things are covered in the news, you'll hear the locals tell the news, oh, we don't call the cops about this. Whether they're afraid of retaliation from the people putting this on or they don't think the cops are going to do anything. But it's not only that the locals aren't reporting the crime happening. Even when the cops are reporting it, wait till you find out how they're reporting it.
What do you think is the cause of the uptick?
Well, good morning, supervisors. Commander Terrence Bell from the LA County Sheriff's Department. And to specifically answer your question regarding the uptick in 25%, it was due to underreporting. And
what's that?
Underreporting, you say? Tell me more.
I think last year that we did not have the collection data in I guess, the method in progress. This year, at one of our last hearings, I spoke about a specific radio code, how the Sheriff's Department, how we track these street takeovers. Before, it was incorporated with everything, from street takeovers to speeding or whatnot.
Yes, you just heard that. Your radio did not zone out. LA County and the Sheriff's Department were reporting street takeovers the same way they report speeding.
When you think about these crimes, it's a litany of crimes that take place when there's a takeover and then a looting. Because you have the speeding, you have the, I guess, taking a intersection and a main thoroughfare offline. You have the donuts that are going on where people get hit right and left and public property is destroyed. And then you have the break-in and the looting that goes on. So if you participate in one of these things, my guess is you didn't break one law. You probably broke a dozen.
You forgot setting the cars on fire. That's also part of it.
So now we have solidified and specifically target street takeovers in a new radio code, and we presented that to our deputies. And based on that, when people called in, they were calling in, telling us about a street takeover. So now we're able to decipher what was a street takeover and what was just speeding. So
the incompetence at every level of this county is just astounding sometimes. Who exactly decided to have the Sheriff's Department, up until recently, not report a street takeover as its own kind of crime?
So strange.
There was a slight uptick in calls for service. And then when the summertime, as our summertime, right, we've definitely seen an increase in street takeovers during the summertime. So that's the reason why you see the uptick. But I just want to really hone in on the fact that this working group, all of these collaborative enforcement, that we've seen tremendous success.
Define success.
This is what they do. They're a complete failure at the basic duties of the job, and then they do nothing but pat themselves on the back, thank each other for their leadership, and declare success.
It's just because you've seen a slight uptick, we've had success in combating the street takeovers. We are reducing street takeovers each and every day, especially in the county.
How many cars have you towed? How many have been crushed into cubes? How many people have been successfully prosecuted for participating or organizing these events?
Good questions.
Now, of course, law enforcement is only one angle to this multi-pronged public safety approach. Public works is also a big aspect of this, because if you change the way the streets look and the intersections and you add certain infrastructure, you make it almost impossible for people to take them over and do the donuts. Except when you're LA County Public Works, as this guy explains to Hilda.
Okay, I just want to make sure I haven't heard staff, is that correct? Okay, but in any event, I really do want to make sure we monitor this. And I get it that we need to see what the community says, but also if the first plan didn't come out, was that driven by the community or just your staff?
Well, the first plan was we putting in traffic circles. That was one of the alternatives that we tested towards handling the donuting and the
But
street
you didn't
takeovers.
ask the community?
We had some input from the community as well at the time. What we found, though, is that in certain size of installations, doesn't work as well because you can do donuts around a perfect circle.
This conversation is really happening, huh?
They put in a traffic circle at some of these intersections, but the traffic circle was small enough that you can still do donuts around it.
Seems like they didn't think it through.
Because they're small.
Right.
ones
So
that I've
changing
seen in
that
East LA.
dimension and changing that geometry is what we're exploring now.
There is incompetence at every single department in Los Angeles County.
And they're so incompetent, they don't even know how incompetent they are.
But that's only part two of this multi-pronged approach, which also includes the Department of Youth Development. Try to explain to me what that department does, putting on seminars to tell all the kids how bad street racing is. Not really sure we've seen any effect from that. Those are the ones that are put on by Babs.
Yeah.
And, of course, there's also the idea that the Board of Supervisors is exploring is there a way to have a safe, legal alternative to taking over an intersection and lighting everything on fire and looting?
Safe consumption for street takeovers.
Let's hear what Hilda has to say about this.
I did want to ask, though, you mentioned earlier in your presentation, you're not looking at Dodger Stadium, SoFi, or Long Beach.
Okay, somebody actually got paid at the county to call SoFi Stadium and say, would you like to host a street takeover event?
What dummy would say yes to that?
Well, Dodger Stadium said no. Long Beach said no. SoFi said no. Guess who said yes?
But you are hopeful about something happening at the Fairplex. So what does that entail?
Pomona said yes.
You don't say.
What exactly would that entail?
I'll start, and then Jonathan, if you want to come up. So what we're looking at is a legal alternative that would be at Pomona Fairgrounds. We're working with them to try to figure out if there's some legal events that we can hold there around street racing and allowing for some street takeovers. Jonathan Lawson from the Slide District Racing League is here, who's been leading this effort for us, so I'll let him come join.
All right, how much is this guy making to be a part of this working group?
A huge sum of money.
Which I've tried to research this Slide District Racing League, and I believe what he's in charge of an esports league where you play street racing video games, and he'd like to translate that into the county giving him a bunch of money to put on legal donut events at the Fairplex.
Because, the county's willing to open up their checkbook for that.
Good morning. Thank you. I've been working with building an alternative for the actual takeovers because I've realized that there are some groups that are just into racing, and they just need a.
That's not what this is.
No.
This is about
not even close.
This is about illegal activity and about a bunch of jackass teenagers with one parent that have no consequences for their behavior, because the last thing we want to do in LA County is arrest juveniles so then they can sue us while they're in juvie.
And they just need a place for them to be able to do it. So building an alternative will also give us the ability to separate what's happening with the criminal activity and then those that actually want to participate in a sport.
This is how disconnected this conversation is from reality. The assumption that the jackasses that participate, organize, and go to these events every single weekend all over up and down the state of California are doing it because they really are into cars.
Yeah, I don't think the car is the motivator. I think the lawlessness, that's what gets them excited.
I'm working with different groups that are going to support with financing, investing, and so on and so forth to be able to rent places like Pomona Fairplex and any other facility.
How do you get that insured?
I don't think you do.
These events have led to loss of life, destruction of property, fires, and looting. How exactly do you get that covered by an insurance policy in this day and age? But also, once the county has a sanctioned event like this, doesn't that open them up to even more lawsuits the same way that now San Diego is getting sued for their county-sanctioned safe camping homeless site?
You would think so, particularly when you know that the likelihood is high that people are going to be injured.
As soon as you start endorsing lawlessness, you're liable for it.
And any other.
We're just getting started with this, Johnny, because not only do we have the idea of legal street takeovers at Pomona Fairplex, but we're also going to partner with Snapchat to put on some PSAs.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you'd like to download the podcast from yesterday's show or previous shows, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts. If you don't know what that is, which is fine, it's not for everybody, but if you have an iPhone, it's that purple button that says podcasts. Then you hit the bottom corner and you hit search. Then just type in John Phillips Show. And there it is. And you'll see yesterday's shows, including Bonta suing L.A. County and the Megyn Kelly interview and that guy talking about the nonsensical drug policy of Washington and Oregon. You can download those episodes. You can hit play. You can share them with your friends. Do whatever you want with them. I don't know. They're yours. Once you download them, have fun with them.
All right. What do you say we give away some tickets?
Well, let's do that right now. Speaking of Megyn Kelly, 790 KABC welcomes Megyn Kelly live with special guests Jillian Michaels, Fifth Column, and Maureen Callahan at the Honda Center November 21st. Tickets are on sale now at MegynKelly.com. But right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-790-5222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by Sabretooth Touring. Good luck dialing.
All right. So we told you that street takeovers, we've been telling you that street takeovers in Los Angeles are a massive problem, and they're not being reported correctly by the county. So now the county is trying to figure out what to do about it.
And one of the things they're trying to figure out how to solve the scourge of street takeovers is finding a safe and legal place to do them. And the place they're looking to do them is the Pomona Fairplex, which, as Vince wrote in, is owned by L.A. County. So, of course, they're dumb enough to say yes. Here is the guy on the task force from a slide racing district league talking about his plan for the county to give him a whole bunch of money to hold these events.
And any other facilities that would be willing to accept us, covering the insurance costs and all of that stuff, so that they're able to.
What do you think that conversation is like with State Farm?
I can't believe that State Farm just didn't say, all right, this is the last straw. We're leaving the state altogether.
Well, they kind of already said that.
Covering the insurance costs and all of that stuff, so that they're able to come in and build, I guess you could say, an actual racing league, a real league that they can come in.
You know, it's not racing that they do, right?
No, it's pretty much the appetizer before the looting.
It's doing donuts and setting things on fire and shooting off fireworks and a whole bunch of other things you're not supposed to do. In Oakland, there's usually guns firing in the air as well.
A real league that they can come in and become professionals, and the ones that really.
This is a career path now. Although it already kind of is, because the jackass teens make money off of these things by broadcasting them on TikTok and Snapchat.
Oh, yeah. They have an entire audience that exists out there on social media, and they just have to keep putting out content to keep their audience happy.
And the ones that really want it can be a part of that, whereas the ones that just want to do the criminal activity will be separated from the group.
These people are so far gone, and they don't even know it.
This is what happens when LA County forms a task force to solve a problem that in other counties in California has been easily solved. You look at what happened in El Dorado County and San Joaquin County. What do? They have a massive operation where they tow every single car, not just the performers, but the participants, and none of them got their cars back until their cases were adjudicated. Those things shut down right away. And then they went to Vallejo.
This is what happens. They downplay it with how they describe it. So you have the quote-unquote peaceful protests. These are the peaceful protests that are resulting in the cities being burned down. They're resulting in graffiti all over the place. They're resulting in the Waymos being lit on fire. They're resulting in the black and whites being lit on fire. They're resulting in all of that we've seen. And they say, oh, it's peaceful protests. When you're dealing with these street takeovers that result in the looting of 7-Elevens or jewelry stores or smoke shops or whatever, they downplay it by saying, oh, this is just, there's certain people that are having fun and there are certain people who are doing illegal acts. If you're participating in this, you're not part of a group that's just having fun. You're there when they're breaking all of these laws. That's part of it. So to downplay it by saying, well, there's one group that's there for fun and one group that's there for being mischievous, that's not an accurate way of describing it.
You know, it was wild. I was listening to a story yesterday about how Santa Monica is going through some real tough financial challenges, might even have to declare bankruptcy for a whole bunch of reasons. And the report about the state of Santa Monica is like, Santa Monica hasn't really recovered from the pandemic or, of course, the George Floyd injustice protests.
All right. It's the John Phillips Show.